Amen. Merry Christmas. You guys sound lively. We could do that again. Merry Christmas. Man, when we were getting ready for tonight and all the preparation for it, we were talking about it for several weeks now, and Amy, who you just heard from, she was conscious of the fact that there'd be kids in the room. She's like, there's going to be kids in the room, so you're going to preach less, right? And I'm like, yeah, she's like, okay, because I'm thinking like, there's going to be kids in the room, so maybe not a standard, she said it so many times. She's like, there's going to be kids in the room, so maybe don't say as much as you normally, it's like all I could think today was like, maybe I shouldn't, am I supposed to give like a full-length message? No, I'm just kidding. Amy just gave the message. What an incredible, that's the story of Christmas. The rescuer has come, right? In Isaiah, 600 years before Jesus was born. Without knowing any of the stuff that we know now, it's so easy for us to look back and to see all the prophecies and the fulfillment of it, and it's clear, right? We can see it with this 2020 vision. Well, 600 years before Jesus was born, without knowing any of that, it must have been so foggy, but he wrote from God's perspective this prophecy about the one who would be born 600 years ahead of time. Here's what he says, parts of what he said, and some of this will sound familiar. He says, the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. I love that verse. Those who live in the land of deep darkness, upon them a light has dawned. Every warrior's boot used in battle, every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning. It will be fuel for the fire. All those old ways will be gone. For to us a child is born. To us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders. He will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. And then the way he wraps it up, this line at the end, the zeal of the Lord will accomplish this. It's so powerful. There's so much truth in it. There's so many spiritual truths. Christmas contains so many spiritual truths all in this one easy to grasp story, right? But many of those truths will be lost on us if we don't understand this one first, that the world is a dark, dark, dark place, right? And we'll never find our way out of it unless we're given light. That makes sense, right? Matthew quotes the Isaiah passage when he writes about Jesus being born in the world that Jesus was born into. Matthew quotes Isaiah saying, the people walking in darkness, people are walking in darkness when Jesus is born. People are walking in darkness, Isaiah says, when he's writing 600 years before Jesus is born. The people walking in darkness, though, when he's born, have seen a great light. Matthew goes, that's Jesus coming onto the scene. On those living in the land of deep darkness, this is rich language, a light has dawned. John picks up the theme when he says the true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. That's his beginning to the Jesus story, right? The light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. Right? Because the world is dark. How is the world dark? Well, in the Bible, when the authors of the scriptures write about darkness in the Bible, it represents two things. One is evil. The other is ignorance, right? It means first that the world is filled with evil, untold suffering. Easy to see when we consider the world both that Jesus was born into, the one that Isaiah was writing from 600 years before. This world back then was a world filled with violence, with injustice, abuse of power, homelessness, refugees fleeing oppression, families ripped apart, bottomless grief, racism, exploitation, even human trafficking. These were things that were going on back then. We have come so far. The other way the world is dark is no one knows enough to cure the evil in it. This is the ignorance part, right? We're lost. He says the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. That light entered the world, right? But this is in Isaiah 9. At the end of Isaiah 8, Isaiah has things so dark that people are consulting mediums and spiritualists trying to understand the future by looking at the past, consulting dead people, like trying to figure out how in the world to fix the mess that we're in. They begin looking towards the earth, Isaiah says, rather than looking up. They start looking to their experts, to their mystics, to their scholars for solutions from right within our own world. Does this sound familiar? I mean, we all agree, I think, that it's dark. Things are bleak. There's darkness. Things are dire. There's still today untold violence, injustice, abuse of power, homelessness, brokenness, grief, racism, exploitation. But we can overcome it, we say. We just need someone to lead us out of it. We need to overcome it ourselves, rise to the occasion. People make the claim all the time that we should look to the government or the state or politics to fix what's wrong with the world. Or others say, look to celebrities, they'll figure it out. Humanitarianism, right? Technology is on the cusp. We can technologically find our way out of this. If we could all modernize and become educated, we could right the wrongs of our world, we could course correct. All these views, no matter where they look down here for rescue, share an identical assumption that though things are dark, that we have a light within us, and the light within us can dispel the darkness. We are the ones who can overcome poverty and injustice and violence and evil. If we all work together, we can create a world devoid of darkness. But can we? One of the most thoughtful leaders in the world in the late 20th century was a man named Havel, the first president of the Czech Republic. He had this unique vantage point from which to peer deeply into socialism and capitalism. He wasn't optimistic that either could fix us. He thought nothing can really solve the world's human problems. He knew science, unguided by moral principles, had given us the Holocaust. He concluded that technology and political systems, a free market, any market, all of these were powerless in safeguarding us from nuclear conflict, which was always just a hair trigger away, ethnic violence, environmental degradation. He wrote that pursuit of the good life will not help humanity save itself, nor is democracy alone enough. A turning to and a seeking of God is what's needed. These are his words. The human race constantly forgets, quote, that he is not God. In a sentence, we can't save ourselves. In fact, the exact opposite is true. The belief we can save ourselves has only led to more darkness. The belief that we can find our way out has made us more lost. This is Isaiah's message. If you turn to science or the occult or self-development or political systems to illuminate you, things in the end up darker. If we look to the earth, Isaiah says, the darkness gets worse. But this is the good news of the Christmas message. The Christmas message declares there is a light, but it's external to the world, coming into the world. That's why Isaiah says, and don't miss it, the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. I love that line. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. If the light comes into the world, it comes from outside of it. If it comes from within the world, it's no light at all. It leads to more darkness. God alone possesses a light that we lack and that we can't ourselves generate. The word that Isaiah uses that we translate dawn, a new light has dawned, may more accurately be translated flashes. That a new light has flashed upon our world for us and to us. Isn't that beautiful? That's why the line is so rich when he says, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given. This child brings light. He's given to us. It's a gift. He's a gift. Isaiah says he's a gift. You have to accept him. Some gifts, though, isn't it true? Some gifts are hard to receive. I mean, for folks like me, I love to see people open gifts. I love to give gifts. I am the most awkward person in the world opening one for me. I don't know what to do. I'm like, oh, thank you. Like, I just would so much rather see you open something, right? It's awkward. Some of you guys are nodding because you're like, that's me too. So it's awkward to receive a gift. But consider more awkward still receiving certain kinds of gifts. Some gifts, by their very nature, make you swallow your pride a bit. Imagine receiving tomorrow morning from someone you love a book about dieting. Yeah, or if someone buys you an Audible subscription for overcoming selfishness, you're like, oh. Or both. You want to say thank you to them, but if you say thank you to them, you're not just thanking them, are you? You're, in a sense, admitting, I am indeed fat and obnoxious. Thank you. Thank you. In other words, receiving certain gifts is difficult because it requires us to admit something that we don't like admitting. Right? There's never been a gift offered that causes us to swallow more pride than the gift of Jesus. Right? Christmas means that we are so lost that we can't save ourselves. We can't do it down here. We can't figure it out. We can't find our way. Christmas means that nothing short of the death of God's own Son could fix us. That means you can't pull it together, and neither can I. You're not somebody who can rescue yourself. You need help. You need rescue. Now, I've been thinking often this season, you see those window clings and signs places that says Jesus is the reason for the season, or don't forget the reason for the season, and I totally get what's meant by that, but sometimes I wonder if we recognize that we're kind of the reason for this season. We're so lost that nothing short of God himself becoming a baby and dying a brutal, horrific death, nothing short of that could save us. Because we can't lead our way out of here. And that's hard to admit, right? In order to receive this gift, we have to admit that we're sinners, that we're broken. You've heard that said before, but consider the depth of descent that requires. It's deeper than you really want to go. It means you have to give up control of your life because you aren't very good at it, no offense. You can't lead your way out. And this is hard, but the promises of God made to us at Christmas can't be ours unless we first admit that we can't save ourselves. We can't be trusted to rule our lives. We can't produce our own light or even make sense of the world without his help. And this is a humble admission, but it's an important one. You see, in the scriptures, we're told about two different people who had two different reactions, right? Two characters to consider whose responses are to be contrasted with one another. We read about a celestial messenger who visits Mary, who would become Jesus' earthly mother. But before that visit, do you remember the angel visits Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist? And briefly in Luke's gospel, just weeks before his visit to Mary, even though Zechariah and his wife are old, the angel says, you guys are going to have a son too. Zechariah he's doubtful. And in response, the angel strikes him dumb. He won't be able to speak until the child is born. Right? The angel says to Zechariah, don't be afraid. Your prayer has been heard. You're going to have a son. And Zechariah says, how can I be sure of this? I am an old man and my wife is well along in years. And then the angel says, I'm Gabriel. And so now because you questioned me, you're going to be silent. You're not going to be able to say anything until the true and appointed time comes. And then just a few verses later, the same angel visits Mary. We talked about this last Sunday. Luke continues that the angel went to her and said, greetings, you are highly favored, which should make you tremble a little bit. It does, Mary. The Lord is with you. And Luke gives us this great insight to Mary's response that we've spoken about, suggesting that he interviewed her directly and he composed this gospel when he says, Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. The word translated that she wondered here or was troubled, she weighed out what he was saying, what he was asking her to do. The angel described to her what she would go through. And Mary expresses, she must have had a shocked look on her face. How can these things be, she asks. I'm going to give birth to a son. How can this be since I am a virgin? And then the angel continues, the Holy Spirit will come upon you. The power of the Most High will overshadow you. The Holy One who will be born will be called the Son of God. Then even your Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age. She was told that she couldn't conceive, and she's in her 6th month right now. For no word from God will ever fail. So Zechariah expresses doubt once and is struck dumb. Mary expresses a bit of questioning, and she is consoled. This seems like God sending mixed signals a bit, doesn't it? At least at first glance. It seems like we've been conditioned to believe that we shouldn't ever doubt. But what we see in these two stories is the Bible's view of doubt is a bit nuanced. Mary teaches us that some doubt seeks answers. She's just asking how. Zechariah teaches us that some doubt is a defense against the possibility of answers. He doesn't see how. And the contrast between those two folks, you kind of go, man, which kind am I? Am I someone who believes but goes, but how is this going to happen? Or am I somebody who doesn't believe and just goes, man, I don't see how this could happen? Mary's doubt, her openness, her willingness moved her from a measured incredulity to a beautiful, stunning acceptance. Remember, she exclaims at the end of her story, I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled. She doesn't say, it's all so clear now. Thanks for clarifying. She says, do whatever you want. Like, I am the Lord's servant. And I think, too, for some of us who struggle with doubt, who struggle with answers, who struggle with feeling lost, sometimes we can only do what Mary does. We can choose to trust, choose to submit, choose to say, I am so lost right now, I have to admit I can't find my way out. Like Mary takes a step of faith, and she's rewarded for it. I would go so far as to suggest that the characteristic note of surprise expressed by anyone who understands the essence of the gospel is this, that not so much that we understand all of it, but just that we take a step. Like, God, I am so lost, but you've given me light. In my lostness, you've allowed your Son to pervade the darkness. What a miracle. This gift that was given to us 2,000 years ago, God gave this gift to the world. God gave this gift to us. God gave this gift to you, the gift of a baby born to die. The same one, Colossians 1 says, who holds the whole world together. That baby lying in a manger. Most of us, if we're honest, we hear this and we think, oh man, Jesus would be great to have, right? We can invite him into our lives. He'd be a lovely assistant, a lovely co-pilot. But if he truly holds all things together, as Colossians 1 says, with just the power of his word, if he's truly the external light coming into the world, a world ruled by darkness, can I really respond by treating him like a decent advisor? Can I really treat him as a consultant rather than a sovereign Lord, the sovereign Lord that he is? Becoming a Christian isn't like signing up for a gym. It's not living a wellness program that will help you flourish and realize your potential. It's not a vendor supplying services to meet your needs as long as it meets your needs at a reasonable cost. Christian faith is not blind, but it also is not a negotiation. It's a surrender. It means you take your hands off your life like Mary did. This girl, we spoke of this last, no more than 15 years old, near the bottom of the social ladder, knew that if she surrendered to God, she would go beneath the social ladder, even lower. The only rung lower on the ladder in first century Palestine, the only rung lower than being a single female Jew in the first century was to be a single female, pregnant yet unmarried Jew in the first century. Mary knew she was about to have a baby, and she knew that in this traditional paternalistic society in a small town, she would always be seen as nothing more than the bearer of an illegitimate child. The whole town would think she had either been intimate before marriage with Joseph or she had cheated on Joseph. And she knew those rumors would dog Jesus his whole life too. And yet with this invitation, she goes, I'm the Lord's servant. She surrenders. She doesn't say, I think you'd be a lovely consultant. She takes her hands off the wheel. She has to admit, like, I don't have it all figured out. This world is dark, but I need a light. And in so doing, through her act of obedience, she made available for all of us a way for light to come into this world. So 2,000 years later, sitting in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, things as dark as they've ever been. And we look around the world we live in, and there's still examples of darkness in there. Just watch the news. And I don't know what's going on for you personally, but chances are if we just sat around, we could go around for a bit and share how 24 was a dark year. Just a hard one, huh? I don't know but we look around and we go, man, things are dark, but we need a light. And this light is a light that we can't manufacture for ourselves or create for ourselves. It's a light that came into the world 2,000 years ago. And at the beginning of his gospel, John says, yeah, it's dark. And John was a guy who knew a thing or two about darkness. He'd seen his rabbi die. All of his friends had been executed. And he's sitting alone, banished on a desert island named Patmos when he writes this. He goes, things are dark. I survived Nero, for crying out loud. I know it's a dark world, but the darkness has not overcome. Because a light came into the world. A light from outside. A light we couldn't create, a light we couldn't manufacture, a light we couldn't produce from within our own broken world. Mary made an avenue for a light to be shined in the middle of our world. Salvation that came in the form of a baby. Light in the darkness. And so heaven, just a bit of heaven here. And so as we look around this world and recognize its darkness, we also come back to this story every year of when light came into it too. So, we do this every Christmas Eve. I think it used to be a new thing that churches would do they do a candlelight service on Christmas Eve, and now it's like everybody does a candlelight service on Christmas Eve, but y'all, it never gets lost on me. Melissa, would you dim those lights? I mean, we could go much darker in here, but we're not. But just the contrast in a moment. The darkness of the world that Jesus entered into. And then that singular light. And 2,000 years later, we're the continuation of it. And that light lights up the darkness, and the darkness will not overcome. So Jesus, as we move into this time of singing of that holy night, as we watch these lights go right around the room, we want to give thanks that you didn't leave us down here, as Paul says in Acts 17, to grope our way along, to just try to figure it out, because we never would. We'd never find our way to you. You did everything necessary to get to us. And so we thank you for that light. And we sing and we celebrate that original holy night. Amen. Would you stand with us and we'll sing as you watch this flame spread around the room.
Oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining.